The fight between Peter Aerts and Baruto did not begin when the referee called him forward or when the bell finally rang. It began long before that, in the expectations, doubts, and quiet assumptions that hung in the air as fans, commentators, and fighters themselves tried to understand what this matchup truly represented. This was not simply a clash between two men from different countries, nor was it just another entry on a fight card meant to fill time and entertain. It was a collision between eras, between experience and potential, between a known quantity forged over decades of combat and a massive unknown whose physical presence alone seemed to bend the rules of what a fighter could be. Peter Aerts walked into this fight carrying the invisible weight of history. For years, his name had been spoken with reverence in kickboxing and combat sports circles, associated with violence, resilience, and a kind of old-world toughness that could not be manufactured. He was not the product of a hype machine or social media buzz. He was a man shaped by countless rounds, brutal wars, and moments when quitting would have been easier but never acceptable. Even at 45 years old, an age when most fighters have long since stepped away, Aerts remained active, driven by something deeper than titles or paychecks. He fought because fighting was who he was. Across from him stood Baruto, a figure who looked almost unreal under the bright lights. His sheer size immediately distorted perspective. At over 190 centimeters tall and weighing well over 180 kilograms, he was not just bigger than most fighters. He was bigger than most heavyweights who had ever competed in MMA. Fans knew him from his days in sumo, where his strength had been legendary, where his grip was something other wrestlers feared and respected. Yet sumo, for all its brutality, is a different world from mixed martial arts. Many before him had tried to make that transition, only to discover that size alone does not guarantee success. The question hovering over this fight was simple but heavy. Was Baruto different? As the commentators spoke, there was an undercurrent of fascination in their voices. They noted how Baruto could move, how he could run, dash, and explode forward despite carrying a body that seemed impossibly large. This was not a man lumbering forward on borrowed athleticism. This was a genuine athlete, someone whose physical gifts went beyond mass and into coordination, balance, and endurance. From the moment he appeared, it was clear that he was not just another novelty act. He was something else entirely, and that realization brought both excitement and unease. The rules of the fight added another layer of intrigue. 3 rounds, 3 minutes each, open weight, short rounds that favored explosive action, but also enough time for pressure to accumulate and fatigue to become a factor. For a man like Baruto, whose game revolved around control and suffocation, those 3 minutes could feel like an eternity to anyone trapped beneath him. For Aerts, they represented narrow windows of survival, brief chances to escape, strike, and remind the world that experience still mattered. When the fight finally began, the difference in size was immediate and jarring. Even someone as seasoned as Aerts looked small in comparison, his frame dwarfed by Baruto's massive torso and limbs. Yet Aerts did not hesitate. There was no visible fear, no retreat born of intimidation. He engaged, aware of the danger but unwilling to concede anything psychologically. That alone set the tone. This would not be a fight decided by intimidation. As Baruto moved forward, his strength became apparent almost instantly. When he made contact, it was not just forceful, it was absolute. His clinch felt less like a hold and more like being caught in machinery. Commentators remarked on the hardness of his grip, something that had been whispered about since his sumo days. Fighters who had trained with him spoke of how his hands seemed to lock in place, how once he grabbed you, escape felt theoretical rather than practical. Many watching expected the fight to end quickly once Baruto imposed himself. It would have been understandable. Fighters far younger and lighter than Aerts had folded under far less pressure. Yet Aerts did not fold. He resisted, adjusted, and fought every inch. When the fight hit the ground, it became clear that this was where Baruto's true nightmare began to unfold. On the mat, Baruto did not panic or rush. There was a calmness to his movements that surprised even experienced observers. He passed guard smoothly, settled into dominant positions, and applied pressure with an understanding that went beyond brute force. This was not someone flailing or relying solely on weight. There was technique here, born not only from sumo, but from years of grappling experience that many had underestimated. As Baruto settled on top, the commentary took on a different tone. They struggled to explain what it felt like to be underneath a man like that. One comparison stood out vividly: being pinned under freshly pounded machi, soft yet relentless, molding itself around your face, sealing off every possible escape for air. It was an image that resonated because it captured the unique horror of Baruto's pressure. This was not sharp pain. It was slow, crushing inevitability. Aerts felt it. Later, he would admit that there were moments when he thought about tapping, moments when the pressure was so intense that his body screamed for release. His breathing became labored. Every attempt to turn his head met with more flesh, more weight, more suffocation. There were no gaps, no angles that offered relief. Baruto's body filled every available space, turning gravity itself into a weapon. Yet Aerts endured. Second by second, he refused to give in. The crowd sensed it too. Each time the clock ticked down and Aerts was still there, still fighting, the reaction grew louder. It was not the roar reserved for dominance or victory. It was the roar of respect, of recognition that something extraordinary was happening. Against logic, against physics, against exhaustion, Aerts was surviving. There were moments when the fight felt seconds away from ending. Baruto tightened his control, shifted his weight, and applied pressure that would have finished most men. The short round suddenly felt like a gift from the gods. More than one commentator suggested that if the round were just a minute longer, the outcome would have been inevitable. Fate, timing, and Aerts' refusal to surrender combined to keep the fight alive. One of the strangest aspects of the matchup was how Baruto's body itself altered the dynamics of submission fighting. Traditional chokes rely on anatomy, on the presence of a neck that can be compressed. Baruto, almost humorously, seemed to lack that vulnerability. His thick frame turned his lack of defined neck into a defensive weapon. Chokes that would work on almost anyone else simply did not function the same way. The usual rules did not apply. Aerts, drawing on decades of experience, attempted to adapt. He searched for angles, tried to create space, looked for opportunities to strike or scramble. Even from the bottom, he threw punches when he could, refusing to settle into passivity. This was not a man content to lose a decision or simply survive. He wanted to fight, to attack, to impose his will in whatever way remained available to him. As the fight progressed, something unexpected happened in the arena. The emotional center of the bout shifted. While Baruto was the one controlling the action and likely winning on the scorecards, the crowd's heart began to align more with Aerts. They saw in him something timeless. The warrior who refuses to quit, who continues to fight even when the odds are absurdly stacked against him. It was a reminder of why fans fall in love with combat sports in the first place. The final round carried a sense of inevitability and tension in equal measure. Baruto continued to apply pressure, demonstrating stamina that defied assumptions about men of his size. 3 minutes may not sound like much, but when you are carrying that kind of weight, when you are actively controlling another human being, it becomes a test of conditioning and will. Baruto passed that test, maintaining control without appearing panicked or exhausted. Aerts, meanwhile, continued to attack whenever he found the slightest opening. Even in the closing moments, when logic might have dictated caution, he threw punches, attempted movements, and fought as if a finish were still possible. This refusal to concede mentally, even when physically dominated, defined a performance more than any specific technique or exchange. When the final bell rang, it marked the end of a fight, but not the end of the story. The result on paper mattered less than what the bout had revealed. Baruto had proven that he was not merely a curiosity or a gimmick. His physical gifts translated into real effectiveness, and his composure suggested that he could grow into something truly dangerous. At the same time, Aerts had reaffirmed his legacy. Even in defeat, he reminded everyone why his name carried weight, why he was admired not just for his victories but for his spirit. In the aftermath, discussions quickly turned to Baruto's future. Experts spoke about the potential of the super heavyweight division, a category defined not just by size but by rarity. Fighters like Baruto do not come along often. When they do, they tend to redefine expectations. The key, many agreed, would be how he continued to develop, understanding his own body, learning where to apply effort and where restraint was wiser, refining technique to complement his natural advantages. If he could do that, the ceiling was enormous. There was also recognition of what facing someone like Aerts had given him. A debut against a legend is not an easy path. It tests not just skill but mentality. Baruto passed that test. He did not panic under the spotlight. He did not crumble under the pressure of expectation. Instead, he delivered a controlled, dominant performance that announced his arrival in a serious way. For Aerts, the fight fits seamlessly into the broader narrative of his career. He had never been a man who chose the easy road. Even late in life, he sought out challenges that mattered, fights that tested him, and added meaning to his journey. His presence in Japan, his training with top fighters, and his willingness to step into an open-weight fight against a physical anomaly all spoke to his character. He was not there to protect a record. He was there to fight. The crowd's reaction reflected that understanding. As the fight concluded, there was a sense that something special had been witnessed, not because of highlight reel finishes or dramatic knockouts, but because of the raw truth of the contest. Strength met experience. Pressure met perseverance. Neither man left unchanged. In interviews afterward, there was gratitude on both sides. Baruto acknowledged the importance of the opportunity, understanding that facing someone like Aerts added legitimacy to his debut. Aerts, in turn, spoke with humility and respect, thanking supporters and reflecting on the experience with the calm acceptance of a veteran who knows exactly what he has given to the sport. As conversations continued, broader themes emerged. The allure of heavyweight and open-weight fighting. The way size and power amplify the drama of every exchange. The idea that these divisions represent a kind of primal combat, where the limits of the human body are tested in ways lighter divisions cannot replicate. It is this rawness, this sense of danger and unpredictability, that continues to captivate audiences. Baruto's debut was described by some as the arrival of a monster, but not in a dismissive or sensational way. Rather, it was an acknowledgement of how rare and fascinating such a physical specimen is in combat sports. Monsters, in this context, are not villains. They are forces of nature, challenges that compel others to rise to the occasion. At the same time, Aerts' performance served as a reminder that monsters do not always win hearts. Sometimes, it is a man who refuses to fall, who endures unimaginable pressure and continues to fight, who becomes the emotional core of the story. That night, Peter Aerts embodied that truth. Looking back, the fight stands as a snapshot of combat sports at their most honest. No gimmicks, no artificial drama, just two men testing themselves under unforgiving conditions. It showed that greatness can take many forms. It can be found in overwhelming dominance, and it can be found in stubborn resistance. Both have value. Both deserve respect. As Baruto moves forward in his career, this fight will likely be remembered as a foundation upon which everything else was built. The moment when questions turned into answers, when potential became tangible. For Aerts, it will be another chapter in a career defined not by avoiding danger, but by embracing it. In the end, this bout was not just about who won or lost. It was about what happens when human beings push against their limits, when strength will collide, and when the outcome is measured not only by judges' decisions, but by the lasting impression left on everyone who watched. If you've made it this far, you've relived a moment that speaks to the very core of why combat sports matter. Now we want to hear from you. Do you believe Baruto has the tools to become a dominant force in the super heavyweight division? Or did Peter Aerts prove that experience and heart can still stand tall against overwhelming size? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this kind of deep, story-driven fight narrative, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter in the world of combat sports.